Lisette, ici. Viens ici. And who is this handsome gentleman? Well, come down here.
Andrew, come on.
No, come on, Andrew. We don't want you up there. Is Andrew speaking too?
Andrew's part of our group.
I'm the professor.
I know. Piacere. Bellissimo. Io non parlo bene la sua lingua.
Gentlemen, if you take your places, we are, and lady, madame.
Not speaking the language.
No, we'll speak English, inglese. Do you need another? Oh, then I'm introducing you. Yes. Oh, whoops! I hate this. Well, this is truly the last class of this spring 2009 semester, and I'm glad to see you all here. I hope all, okay? Because I think this is the frosting on the cake. This is the best part, because FSN, as you will learn, and you have read the posters, and your everything else, they will bring you the finale, because each guest speaker has told you how the facts of life about the fashion industry in different areas, etc. You know, I don't want to waste time doing that. You already have made notes, and by the way, let me go over what's going on here. Am I doing this right? Okay. Oh, there's my sweet girl. Is Stephanie coming?
She's coming.
Okay. Stephanie, we need you down here. Okay. All right. This, as I said, is the last class of spring 2009. And today is a required class, as you know. Your attendance today will remove one absence. I'm giving you a present. If you have 3, you will now have 2. So you won't lose any fine points in your final grades, which are, turn off that silly cell phone. I hate it. Okay. All right. I don't want, and your final grades are in, by the way. And you'll laugh even more because I gave so many A's, they're going to get suspicious once they enter. They'll say, this, what kind of a professor? She gives A's. You'll see. So, and I just wanted to say, I haven't entered the final grades on the silly computer, but it'll be there. I finished grading them over the weekend. And you can pick up your papers if you wish. We have your field trips, your final exam, and I think the final exam should be interesting because you'll see where you didn't make the right choice, the ABC, okay? You should be curious about that. And the special assignment which you did, I was proud of you, the American designers, the 15 American, and when you pick them up, I would keep it in my file because you probably have them online on your computer, but it's nice to have them written too. Now I'll go on to today. Today we have a special opportunity at this difficult time in the world of disaster, financial disaster and all kinds, especially in our fashion industry, which we're interested in, because that's where our future lies. And we have the Fashion Service Network, and you must read the flyers that they provided for you to learn about their organization. And they're here well, where am I? Difficult time, yes, to have FSN come and talk about issues facing graduates and other fashion students who are embarking on careers in fashion and their related fields. These professionals who are here today in different fields, which you will learn about, will deliver strategies and other facts for a positive entry into the fashion world. We owe this special opportunity to our Dean of Art and Design, who is here, Joanne Arbuckle, for introducing us. Yes, we all applaud. Thank you, Joanne. When Joanne told me about it, I thought, well, how brilliant. We must have them. They were here last semester, too, and that's why we want a repeat performance, because these are all new students, as you know. And positive entry into the fashion world. Please, oh, yes, we did. I love Joanne, who introduced the oh, I wanted you to introduce the Master of Ceremonies. No, I will do it, because I think he's so good looking, by the way. Okay, I'll tell you. All right. His name is J. Michael Stanley, and he's with Rosenthal and Rosenthal. And I will pass the podium on to Michael, and he will tell you about the panelists here, Kathleen, Andrew, and Stewart. But before I go away from here, I want to say Abe Beda. He's the managing director of the Fashion Service Network, and he's the glue who puts everything in place. I loved working with him. Where did he go? Where are you? Stand up so we can... that's Abe. Now, please take me away.
Thank you very much.
And that's yours.
Thank Professor Bafasian, thank you so much. And I want to congratulate everybody for getting A's in Alice's class. It's a great class, right, Alice? They look brilliant, by the way. Yeah, I could tell.
I'm so proud of them, I have to say that, because this is the last class.
And they're alert.
Every guest speaker was in shock when the question period came. They asked brilliant questions. It was great. Thank you.
Okay, so Michael Stanley, as Professor pointed out, and I'm part of this group called Fashion Services Network. And besides our panelists on the right, we have people that service the fashion industry. And we service a whole array of different industries. For example, we have a member that's involved in advertising, in publishing, in branding, in chargeback recovery. What's a chargeback again? In customs, in distribution, in insurance, legal, logistics, purchase order financing, real estate, supply chain management, warehousing, really across the board. So any possible service or advisor that you could think of in our industry is probably part of our group. But on my right, on your left, is on the far right is Stewart Kegel, and Stewart runs a company by the name of 24/7, and they're really one of the preeminent firms in the staffing business, and they specifically have a niche in the fashion business, and they service companies that look for either permanent or part-time employment, staffing, and he's got a great website, which you certainly can look at. To Stewart's left is Kathleen Sheehan, and she is the founder and president of ESP VP Trend Lab, and they're an advisor to a whole array of very big names, and she can tell you some of her, very showcase clients. And she advises them in color and trends and all different aspects of the fashion business. And last but not least is my friend and neighbor, Andy Chason. Andy is the managing director of Chason O'Rourke Group, and Andy's business is investment banking, and he advises people in branding, along with a whole host of other advisory capabilities. Andy has his primary office in New York, but also an office in London and in Tokyo. And that's our very distinguished group of panelists. So our first question, and by the way, we're going to have plenty of time for you to ask questions as well. But let me just get a couple of questions out to our panelists. Kathleen, you have like the creme de la creme of clients. Name a couple of your clients.
Let's see. We work with DKNY, Calvin Klein, Eileen Fisher, Starbucks, which is usually a surprise to people that, they make coffee, but they want color, design, and lifestyle trend research. Muzak, all the retailers from Saks to Target to everyone in between, Sears, Kmart, JCPenney, beauty companies like Elizabeth Arden, MAC Cosmetics, Maybelline, full range of beauty. That's kind of a good cross-section, right?
Yeah, and Kathleen,
Yes.
you are certainly more adept to describe precisely what you do for these clients.
Well, we actually offer 3 types of services to our clients. The one that about 1,000 companies work with our company every year is taking some kind of research that's usually in the form of like a color, trend, or lifestyle research forecast book. That's, anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000 per book for a forecast. And that's how we work with most clients. Then we do consulting projects. And then the third part of our business is events. We do conferences and workshops and things like that throughout the world.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stewart, tell us about some of your clients, if you wouldn't mind.
First of all, congratulations. And it's great to see all of you here. 24/7 provides creative talent. That's all we do. We work with companies to help them manage their products from concept to commercialization. In the apparel segment, that's anyone from Tommy Hilfiger, Polo Lauren, Liz Claiborne, all of the retailers, Talbots and Taylor, the Gap, all of the limited divisions. In the beauty area, L'Oreal, Avon products. We work with the entertainment industry. You say entertainment, what does that have to do? Well, it's a lifestyle product. Universal Studios, we work with Cablevision, ESPN. Any company that's bringing a product that they are trying to lifestyle brand, we're involved with in helping them manage that product, particularly on the creative and design side of the business. And we do that both in the freelance side of the business, where companies are looking for collapsible, expandable workforces to address issues, as well as permanent placement.
Thank you, Stewart. Mr. Chason, sir?
Stewart, congratulations to everybody, and congratulations on taking the next steps in your life. And congratulations on being able to sit in classes with professors like Alice and Joey Arbuckle and the institution. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Now, this is good. But most important, I think that you've just completed a cycle of your lives and your education of getting ready to be ready for whatever you're going to do. My practice also deals with similar clients to Stewart and Kathleen. We represent some of the largest designers like Calvin Klein, Giorgio Armani, the people that own Donna Karan and Donna Karan LVMH. We also represent smaller firms which are starting up and some that reach middle cycle. So we've helped give birth to brands like Nanette Lepore and to Norma Kamali, and I've worked with Jill Stewart over the years, and Vivian Tam and Anna Sui, and people that have crossed over and become retailers and wholesalers like BCBG, which is both, and small companies like Foley and Carina, which have found a place in the Lower East Side in California. We do several things in our practices, and the practices, as I say in plural, are dealing with brands and product. Do people have an idea where the brands belong and where the products belong? And before you become a brand, you have to have sort of a replication of the process of people buying it over and over again. So we help people create that opportunity. We also work with companies in trying to figure out how they finance themselves. You know, what is required? What are the capital bases or the credit needs? And then we look at the organization. Who does what to whom and why? And this all comes about, and speaking for Stewart and Kathleen, because we have experience. We've sort of learned stuff of what to do and what not to do. And that's why we're consultants. So our practices deal within the global reach of getting a product from somebody's sketchbook into somebody's closet.
Andy, how did you get to where you are today?
I made a left turn instead of a right turn. I wanted to go to medical school and I just didn't do it. I started by working in a family business that was a domestic producer of blouses in 1971, and realized that it was an interesting and very complicated business. I had gone to an Ivy League school and graduated last in my class, but I graduated, and I realized that I didn't have a lot of skills that were useful in the real world. And I went to work as a journeyman, and the journeyman was learn to sell. And learn to sell meant look at the products, look at other people who are sellers, and sort of copy and develop a style. Quickly thereafter, I realized working at a family business, for me at least, was a bad idea. And I needed to find some experience. So I did what a lot of people did in the 1970s. I took the next job in the next company, and I realized I didn't want to be a sales guy. I wanted to know how to be a sales guy, but now I wanted to learn about product. And I made it my business to follow everyone in design and anybody in production that would talk to me and find the questions and the answers to what would take my career on the next path. And then someplace in the middle, I got very lucky. I met some people in Hong Kong who were production people who were in the jeans industry, and they were looking for someone to help them find a marketplace. And I kind of lied a little bit, and I told them I knew everybody. And I guess fabricating a little bit, not lying. And I learned a little bit about production of jeans. And with a little bit of luck and a lot of good timing, and luck is most important, along with knowing how to find your luck by being intelligent and being educated and trained, I went into the jeans business and had a very fortunate run of 5 or 6 years as a partner in one of the first designer jeans companies. Luckily, those partners of mine also had retail stores, so I also learned about the retail business, how important it was to be able to have your own stores as a laboratory while developing a wholesale business. And luck struck again. Luck was one day while we were showing product at a trade fair, a fellow named Don Fisher showed up at our booth. Don happened to be the chairman of the Gap. Don is sort of a very tall, thin fellow who asks a lot of questions. And he said, these are pretty cool jeans. And at that time, the Gap was selling Levi's jeans and some of their own jeans. He said, would you like to come and sell your company to me? And I had never sold anything other than garments. And I quickly had to learn how to sell my company. And what I did was I sold my company to the Gap in 1978. And then again, luck struck. The Gap became Ralph Lauren's first licensee in jeans. And I took part in building the Ralph Lauren business for a short period of time. And on. Later in my life, I wound up in a company in France that was the licensee of Ralph Lauren women's wear, the licensee of Calvin Klein menswear. We owned Yves Saint Laurent, and we were Lagerfeld's partner. All very famous names, which sound very exciting from the outside looking in, but it was all about work and building brands and building product and building distribution and finding customers. And then, if you've ever heard of the word herding cats, you know what it is to herd cats? Well, imagine taking 5 or 6 licensed designers and a couple you own and trying to get them to focus and to pay attention to the signs of there's business called margin, there's business called production scheduling, production needs to have time and action calendars. Well, that became my job. And I was very lucky to build a career from the cheapest product, selling blouses that my uncle made that were sold at $25 a dozen, to selling evening gowns that cost $25,000 a gown. But all doing the same thing, looking at product, time and action calendars, scheduling, and most importantly, customers. 20 years ago, I started a consulting group. As I told you, my consulting group deals with the folks that used to look like me, people that were in the apparel business. So my business is a reflection of everything I learned and all the questions I asked and all the things I learned not to do as well as what to do. I guess I'm called a consultant.
Kathleen, in 1978, you were in the sandbox, were you not?
Not quite. I think I had graduated from the sandbox.
But not that far
away. I was pretty close.
How did you form your company?
How did we form the company? Well, I have to make a little correction. I joined ESP Trend Lab, but my business partner, Alan Sederi, founded the company.
I know, but
so,
Kathleen, I just have to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Without you, that company today would be nothing. Let's be honest.
Well, Ellen's a pretty remarkable woman. I'm just going to Hello. This one sounds much better.
Okay, fine.
Ellen's a remarkable woman. So she founded the company, and every year the business changes, though, and every year it evolves. So I've been in the company for 10 years, and I joined the company right after business school. I went to Harvard Business School, which actually has a pretty strong concentration in retail and apparel, which I found out just about the time I was looking into business schools to apply to. It's not really widely known. And after business school, one of the biggest shocks in my life is that at the time, people I even knew who knew me pretty well, after I had this degree from Harvard Business School, it was like an albatross around my neck. People kept saying to me, you don't want to go back into the fashion business, do you? Why would you ever want to do that? Don't you want to get into investment banking or something like that? And it was really such a big struggle. And when sometimes, we all have nightmares at night. Sometimes I dream about that job search. It was a tough one. And so I did what people do. You kind of network and you talk to friends and you say, is there anyone you know that, and one thing led to another, and I met Ellen Sederi, who is a friend of a friend of a friend, and she happened to be looking for someone on the sales and marketing side in the business, and even her brother said, but this girl has a degree from Harvard Business School. Are you sure you want her to join you in your company? And Ellen, being fearless, and a lot of people here in this room know Ellen, my business partner, said, of course I want to meet this girl. And we met, and I'll never forget, my brother said to me, right before I was leaving Philadelphia, where I was at the time, to drive in to New York for that meeting, my brother said such important words. He said, Keeks, he calls me Keeks. He said, Keeks, you just go in there and you be yourself. And the whole time I was driving that 2 hours from Philadelphia to New York, I just kept thinking that. And from the moment I met Ellen in that showroom, I just felt like there was a natural chemistry. And 6 months later, while I was working in the company, she asked me to become her business partner in the business. So a much deeper relationship than an employee relationship. And of course I said yes. So that's how together we took the next steps with the company to take it to where it is today. And we're still taking steps. I mean, that's one of the great things about having a company. It keeps unfolding over time. So that's how I got started at ESP.
Fabulous. Stewart, tell us about the evolution of 24/7.
We started the business in March of 2000, and my partner, who's president of our company, Celeste Goodis, and I started the business. We rented an office in Soho. We basically had a concept and no clients. That's taking a bit of a leap, and what we were going to focus on is the creative side of the business, how the product evolves from concept all the way through to the store. And we started modestly, and then subsequently, we were about 3 or 4 months old, and we had more money in the till on Friday than we did on Monday. And that was important. That sort of meant we were going to stay in business. And we decided that we would hire a branding company. That was the most preposterous thing a 3-month-old company could think of doing. What we wanted to do was find out what our distilled selling proposition was, what our just do it was, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. What was the sentence that would define us in the marketplace? So we started having focus groups, and our first set of focus groups, we had human resources, hiring managers, and candidates. And incidentally, we never found out what our distilled selling proposition is, but we did become focus group junkies, because up until that point, everybody had an opinion, but we really didn't have any information. So we asked a lot of questions of the candidates, and what they universally said was they wanted access to technology they couldn't get access to unless they worked for a company. And when we talked to the hiring managers, they wanted, in essence, to have people who could hit the ground running. And human resources essentially wanted to reduce their cost per hire and look good to their boss. Well, nothing has changed in HR much, but what we learned from the candidates was if the supply side, the candidates wanted to be trained, and the demand side wanted trained people, then it made an awful lot of sense for us to be in the market training technology in anticipation of demand. That was the beginning, really, of sort of the exponential growth of 24/7, and it was that information, or the gathering of that information, that has fed our growth ever since. We no longer have, well, we all have opinions, but we don't act on them. We only act on information, and the information we get from focus groups, because we ask questions and they answer them for us. And as a result, we now have offices in San Diego, Newport Beach, Santa Monica, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, London. The company has grown pretty dramatically, in large part because the focus groups also told us that we're blessed with lots of customers. We have probably over 500 active clients. That's somebody with whom we've had a business relationship in the last 30 days. But our other client universe is actually sitting right here. Every one of you are a potential client of 24/7. And we view the candidate side of the business every bit as significantly as the client side of the business. Because quite frankly, without you, we don't have a business. And the retail community, the wholesale community will always be there, but we won't be there without you. So all of you, again, I said at the top of the show, congratulations, but you're a vital part of this whole fashion equation that we're all struggling to try and figure out.
Stewart, what's the biggest career mistake? I know it's hard to imagine you ever making a mistake, but what's the biggest one you've ever made, Stewart?
You mean today? I mean, I make them on a regular basis. I think Well, as it relates to 24/7, I think our biggest mistake was when we opened the London office, we decided to go to London because we had a common culture separated only by language. If you're paying attention, that was a joke. Okay, that's good. We can laugh, it's okay. Anyway, we took a lot of things for granted, assuming that the UK, doing business in the UK would be like doing business in the United States. Couldn't have been further from the truth. The UK is creeping socialism. There's something called garden leave in the UK, where if you change jobs, you get a couple of months off to kind of reflect on whether or not you did the right thing or not, you know. It's crazy. You know, right, you know, in this job market, you're trying to figure out how quickly the individual can get their resignation under the door so they can get started. But that, I think, is the biggest challenge we've had as 24/7, is underestimating the nuances of an international market.
Thank you, Stewart. You know, if I could just digress, I just wanted to mention, if it's okay by you, exactly what I do. Because I do something that's a little bit on the boring side.
What do you do?
I don't know what I do. We provide the financing for a lot of companies, and the bulk of our companies are in the fashion business. So, and some of our, clients that you otherwise would know of would be like a Diane von Furstenberg, Ernest Sohn. I'm mentioning either current or past clients, Rebecca Minkoff, Carmen Mark Falvo, Michael Kors, John Hardy, and the like. And what we do, we finance their business. When Diane von Furstenberg runs out and she gets an order from Bloomingdale's for $1 million, she calls us up and she says, "Is Bloomingdale's good for the money?" And we tell her, yes, they can pay their bills and everything is good. So we not only lend her the money to make those dresses, but we also manage her receivables and we guarantee the credit. And we do this in the United States, and we have an office in California and also a satellite office in Shanghai as well. But it's kind of a boring type of job because it just involves money. But we have very nice clients, and once in a while, I get to go to a fashion show or two. It's good. So, and it's fun. Kathleen? What would be your top? And as far as a career, your lifetime of in your career, what would be your biggest do's and don'ts?
Let's see. Do's and don'ts. Well, just thinking about the last question, which would be kind of a do, but it was also a mistake for me, is when I was first looking at jobs right out of school, I did not want to go into a retail training program. And my reasons for it, I think looking back on it now, were so silly. For whatever reasons, I was so afraid of working in the lamp department at Gimbels. Like that and now it seems so silly to me that I was so focused on that. Like I was just afraid of surrendering myself to that and ending up in a department that wasn't the women's department or something like that. But what I didn't really fully understand at the time is that being in one of those retail training programs would really provide a foundation for retail and merchandising that is really hard to get elsewhere. And I have spent really so much of the rest of my career trying to get that experience, because for me, after graduating, I went into consulting and I worked at KPMG for about 5 years, and it took me a little while to get back on the fashion dream track, and I worked at Escada, but I still didn't have that retail experience. So the president of Escada kind of took me under his wing and gave me a lot of retail experience and took me out, but in a way I was always playing catch up. So I would encourage all of you who are really interested in fashion to get that retail experience and that merchandising experience. Even if you're on the design side, I think it's really helpful to understand the other side of the business for that really well-rounded view, because so much of it ends up in, even if you're the owner of a company, you really have to, the owner designer of a company, it's helpful to understand the whole chain. So and another so that's a do, and a don't is don't worry about the lamp department, and and I think my biggest do is really follow your instincts and experiment. I spoke with students this morning, and I'll share the same thought I share with them is, like, when I go shopping and I see a great dress on the hanger, I always try it on. I don't care about the price tag. I try it on, and I try it on because so often your imagination is better than the reality. And even if the reality is the dress is fabulous and you can't afford to buy it, it will inform you, and you could get an idea to do it yourself. So I think the same is true with jobs. If you have an idea of what you want to do, don't put it off or say, oh, I'll just get a few more experiences before I write that, a few more years of experience before I write that letter to Diane von Furstenberg. If you really want to work at a place, I say just try, be sincere, and do what you can to get into that place, because so often that personal push, energy, and passion really comes through on the other side. And just being on the receiving end of that makes a huge difference to me. I want to work with people who want to work with us, and that matters because you work with those people every day. You see them more than you see a lot of your friends. So that's my biggest two.
But how did you stand out? Go back to Escada.
Right.
The president chose you. Chose you.
Right.
Why did he? What did you do that was different?
Well, I really cared, and cared deeply. I went to Escada with about 5 years of consulting experience, and I poured my heart and soul into that company. I cared. I kind of dressed the part because I love fashion, and I think when I started, I was more on the business side. But people kind of, they were like, wow, this girl really loves fashion, and she's really committed. I worked really hard, and I was a person that they could trust to kind of follow through on things. So I ended up being the person that the chairman of the board and the CEO of the company relied on to work on presentations and handle very confidential materials. And then they kind of trusted me to work with a lot of the subsidiaries. And one of my favorite moments of all time is, you guys know Badgley Mischka, right? And Escada bought Badgley Mischka, and I was there at the closing when we bought Badgley Mischka with the two designers. And I'll tell you, I think I never stopped smiling. The lawyers were there, and the pencils were people were signing, and I was just so happy to be there because I was just excited to be there. And I think that genuine enthusiasm came through, and I worked hard. I was a hard worker, and I think they knew they could trust me because I really cared the entire time. So, and the one thing that the president of the company told me when he kind of took me under his wing to give me that experience was that it's very hard for companies to find people that have both the creative side and the business side. And what he recognized in me was both sides. So that's the reason that he took a chance on me, and he did. He took a chance, just like the song. Take a chance on me.
Andy.
Yes, Michael.
I mean, I can't imagine you ever doing anything wrong, Andy. Like ever. He yells at me from time to time.
First of all, Michael's wrong. The color of money is always in fashion, and it's very important. Green is a good color. I think the greatest mistake that I made early in my career is not focusing on what a balance sheet is about and learning how to read a financial statement. And as much as that wasn't what my life was about, it eventually becomes part of everybody's life in business, whether you design or in charge of production or do retailing. And there are plenty of ways of learning and being self-taught of how to read those documents because they're boring. And they're not important right now, but they're always important as you run a business. I also believe that if there's a mistake to be made, I met Mark Jacobs and I didn't let him in my office the first time because I couldn't understand what he was trying to tell anybody. Because without his business partner, all he was able to do is show us some sketches. And at the time, I was the president of a company called Biederman. And Mark showed up on our doorstep. He had been designing for Perry Ellis and had an idea, and was exactly what he is today. He was a very compelling story, but no ability to communicate what his ideas were. About 12 years later, we sold his company to LVMH when I figured out what his story was. And I guess part of what we need to do in any business is to pay attention to what you can see, and parts of it what you can't see. Sort of the fringe and ephemeral parts of things. Read beyond the story. If it's only the story, it's easy. When you meet somebody, try to explore a little bit into their eyes and the story to try to find out a little bit more, because you'll never know what that might bring. As far as being able to understand, you've been trained to reason and to see, and you'll continue. One thing that's important is to remember you're always going to be students. If you're going to be in the fashion business, you're never going to be finished being a student. You're always going to sit behind somebody and listen, or walk in the store, as Kathleen said, and try the dress on to see what it looks like, touch something and feel it, and make a comparison to something else. What will this be if it were someplace else, and how can someone else understand it without me selling it? Remember, most of the ideas that you have and the concepts that you would like to have in the future have to be sold to somebody without you being in front of them. They have to be obvious, have to have a good story, and most importantly, have to have a reason to be. So that's what we all do every day. We have a reason to be by reinventing ourselves with our clients. You are now inventing yourselves. And what you want to do is to be able to walk into a meeting, look someone in the eyes, shake their hand, and when you leave, they remember you because you said something, or you took a note, or you made an impression. Constantly remember, we're always making impressions, and they all last.
I just want to mention one little mistake that the founder of my company made a number of years ago. It's a true story. There was a tie designer who lived in the Bronx who was working previously at Brooks Brothers, and he was selling ties. This is a true story. And he formed this company, and he had all these ties that he was selling, and he had orders, and he found his way into Imre Rosenthal. It's true. And he says, listen, I have orders for all the great stores, and I'm going to take off, and we're capitalized and all this other stuff. And he said to this guy, well, what's your name, son? He says, my name is Ralph Lipschitz. He says, okay. He says, you leave your paperwork here, we'll get back to you. So he turned around to my other colleague. He says, the ties look okay, but the name is never going to fly. And Ralph Lipschitz wound up changing his name to Lauren, and we missed out on this huge opportunity. And that's, Andy, I don't know if you know the story, but that's a true story. So we all in life make mistakes. Stewart, give us your biggest sort of advantages. What could you tell the class as far as once you're in a job, we're going to talk later about how do you get a job, but once you're in that job, how do you get to the next level? How does the quickest way to the top?
Okay.
In 3 sentences or
Yeah,
less.
I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to try and do that. This morning, when you got up, you made some choices, whether it was your skirt, your pants, your jacket, whatever choices you made, okay, you've basically had probably about 8 hours to live with them so far, and they reflect your thinking at a given time and place. And incidentally, I think you all look very attractive, so you made good choices on balance today. So far, so good. Well, the reality is that when you land the position, be it a freelance gig or a full-time position, you're going to then be in a position to make a host of choices, and those choices are going to follow you throughout the rest of your career. And it's evaluating those choices in terms of a personal litmus. Is this going to help me further my career? Is it going to help me better understand my present position? Is it going to be effective in helping me deal with my peers? Is it going to influence how I deal with my superiors? Is it going to help me improve my relationships with subordinates? A lot of these things are simple, and many of you have the skills to do this intuitively. However, it is the sum composite, really, of all these choices that you'll wind up with, hopefully not as much gray hair as I have, that is the total of really all those choices. And it's being mindful. I never thought about the choices I was making. So this is sort of do as I say, not as I did. But the fact of the matter is to be mindful of those things and sensitive to the fact that the choices that you make are not only important to you, but they're extremely important to those individuals around you and where your career path may ultimately lead you. Did I answer that question at all?
That was great. Perfect. How about if we open up the floor to questions? Right. Because remember, these people charge a lot of money for advice, I assure you. So that now you
Can we
get
a
it for
microphone
free.
back there?
Do we need a mic? They can hear us, right? Yes, this lady there. You want? Just speak up.
We'd get your microphone.
We can hear her.
What do you look for on a resume of somebody who's interested in getting into trend forecasting, or what qualities do you look for in a person who's looking to pursue this career?
You want to know what qualities that Kathleen would be looking for in that field?
At an entry level? Okay. At an entry level, what I really look for is someone who's willing to do almost anything in our company, and that's the most important thing. So sometimes I'll meet with someone who's interested in coming in entry level, and I'll say, what are you interested in doing? If they tell me they only want to do creative, it just scares me for an entry level job. Our company has about 10 people in it, and we can all have a day where we're jumping in, stuffing envelopes, or, so I look for someone who's ready, willing, able to do many different things, who's not going to have too much of an attitude, who expresses that willingness in a letter to, that the most important thing is to work in the company, and who really believes it. Because I'll ask a ton of questions in an interview to make sure that that's really the case. And I think it's great for students when you're super focused about, design, if you're really committed and you want that. In trend forecasting, it's really hard to find those jobs where you're going to be 100% focused on the creative side right out of school, because most of our positions on the creative side require more experience. As Andy said, a little bit more of a broader view, because you're making choices on the creative side and you're editing, and every decision you make is so important, because whatever you edit goes on to the next stage, so the quality of that first edit has to be so good, and it just takes some experience to do it.
One of the things that we try to find when we hire people, not in my firm, but for our clients and when I was an apparel maker, were people that knew a lot about my company, who came into the office knowing a little bit about what we did and who we sold and how the company operated, and had a global view, which was a small global view because they couldn't have the complete picture, but as Kathleen said, willing to start at the lowest entry level and then quickly able to look at everyone else around them in the pod to say, I can do that job and would like to learn the next job. The person that sweeps in the design room is likely going to be the designer in a firm in the future. And no job is ever too small, maybe a little bit demeaning sometimes, but you've got to build a career from the job.
Yeah, just to add to what Kathleen and Andy were saying, I think I would encourage also all of you to think about freelancing as well. with a market that's extremely sensitive to headcounts, the work still has to be done. And looking at freelance opportunities is a tremendous opportunity to get market entry and get something meaningful on your resume. It's a viable alternative. You can make some money while you're doing it, make some good money while you're doing it, and once again, have the benefit of something that has significance on your resume.
I couldn't agree more with both of those points. Yeah, and we're hiring more and more people freelancing. I think a lot of companies are, because it gives you a lot of flexibility in this job market.
When you, Kathleen, and you do a lot of interviewing as well as Stewart, how long does it take you to determine if that candidate is good for you? How long?
You've heard me answer this question before. I'm terrible. It takes me about 10 seconds. It's awful, but I can be really, really honest with you. And there actually was a research study done at Harvard Business School where they found out that business school professors, they only have 10 seconds to make an impression on the class when they walk into the room. And it is true, and I've tested myself. I make a decision. So like what you're wearing, how you present yourself, your handshake, all of that couldn't be more important. And it's kind of embarrassing to admit in a way, but I feel better knowing that the research just kind of backs it up, that it's true.
So that's very interesting. So it's 10 seconds.
Well, yeah, that's
for you. Okay, but okay. But what could you...
I can't change my mind, but usually it's...
Okay,
usually that first impression holds.
Which is probably the case, I think, in all our cases, okay? What can you tell the class about that? What do they need to do? Because they have 10 seconds. Is it posture? Is it the smile? Is it the firm handshake? Tell us, Kathleen.
Shoes, super important. That your shoes be polished, scuffed, no heel problems, where the heel's worn. It's really, people do look at your shoes. That sounds like an old-fashioned thing, but it's so important. Your nails, really good, clean, neat. You're pulled together. Your outfit's appropriate for whatever the job is. In our company, we're kind of creative, so the fact that if someone gives some thought, they don't come all too buttoned up and not too messy, and then just looking directly, really good eye contact, good handshake, and a nice smile, very open way, confident, and kind of warm. In 10 seconds.
Stuart?
It can be done.
See that?
Yeah,
10 seconds. It's amazing.
Think of it sort of like a personal spell check, as you... the last glance in the mirror, is it what you want to convey? All of that sounds very superficial, but in the end, we're all superficial. But some of us less so than others. And enthusiasm for your work product. There's an age-old maxim in interviewing where you ask a person if you gave them $250,000, what would they do? And if it's a sales position, the answer you want is, I'd spend $251,000 and be back looking for more. That tells you that someone is interested in money. The other question is describe a loss, and what you're looking for is someone to be able to convey a loss to you that is of significance, because we all experience loss in business, and it's really more important how we respond than the actual loss itself. But I think the most important question frequently that I ask is, when did you know? And people will frequently look at you and say, when did I know what? Well, the answer is, the real question is, when did you know you were special? I mean, I knew I was special in the 5th grade when Mrs. Henderson, my homeroom teacher, told me. It's not about your parents. They'll always tell you you're special. Your close friends are always going to tell you. It's sort of independent confirmation that you're special. And if you think about that a little bit, you all have a moment in which you became convinced you were special. And the reason that's important is, if you don't think you're special, Why should anybody else? Particularly the person you're interviewing with. And it's that notion that I actually do want you to think about, but as you're leaving here, whatever you're doing at some course during the evening, you all have had a moment, an epiphany in which, or a time when you believed you were confirmed as being special. Somebody independently sort of confirmed that. And capture that and keep it in your mind, because you are special. And you want to make sure you convey that.
I think if you consider your job search as something like a Broadway play that you're not producing, and until you can produce your own play, you have to know what the casting call's about. And whether you're Goth at home or Brooks Brothers here, understand what the marketplace is. And until you can direct your own play and choreograph the line, you have to play within the frame of who you're interviewing with. And though that may sound a little bit trite and a little bit, I guess, old-fashioned, understand the audience you're playing to. And that'll go a long way in business as well as early stage in developing a career. We as successful entrepreneurs and business people are always on stage. Part of it is to look at the room and work the room and understand who's in that room and adjust the presentation as appropriate. Not compromising your knowledge, not compromising how you present, but understand who you're presenting to. Now, if you want to succeed by getting that opportunity, remember, you're selling you. And it's not just how you feel, how you look, and what you say, it's everything. If you can isolate one of those 10 seconds and somebody looks at your chipped nail polish or decides to look at your tattoos on your hand, that might be something that turns somebody off. So be prepared to make the best presentation possible, because you'll win. If you make the worst presentation possible, you may not have a chance.
There was another guess.
I'm entering the job market, as a lot of people are in this room, the AAC said. And I'm sort of in a predicament myself about going to a larger company to work for or going to a smaller, more up-and-coming designer. What is your feel on who would be best to learn from, more, and get better experience from, in the sense of like learning? The bigger company or the more...
Can I answer that? I think invariably, when you're starting out, bigger is better, okay? Because really what you're doing is you're building your resume, okay? So if you came out of, undergraduate, fine, and you work for a bigger institution, okay, you said, but listen, I worked for, I came out of college, and I worked for IBM, and then you ultimately segued into, a small and niche competitor. That's my suggestion, unless you just happen to get lucky and, get hooked up with a rising star, which is typically unlikely. Andy, you disagree?
I agree. Again, no one's to say not to take the job if that's the only job being offered. And, everyone has to start a career someplace. And you bring the best of intentions, the best of opportunities, the best of your education. But if you think of a lot of small companies that are going to hire you as either designers or technical interns, or even in sales if you decide to take that choice of the road, it's what could you bring them? They're looking at you as an opportunity, not as just young people with great ideas, but what can you help the small company with? I think everyone needs to work in small companies as well as large companies, so at some point you can make a choice and balance. But as Michael said, and I think my colleagues agree, if you have that opportunity to learn from people that more experience, go for the bigger company.
To that, I would just add that I think a lot depends on the small company. So I would evaluate all those things. And I was in a position right out of school where, a really strange position right out of school. I had job offers from The Limited, Caroline Rome, who had her own couture house, kind of very small, very, very small at the time, and another bigger company, and then KPMG, Pete Marwick. And I went with KPMG. I went big. But I can't tell you it wasn't without some regret about working at Caroline Rome, and even though it was a riskier thing, it was a smaller thing, I think it could have been an interesting thing to do for a few years. The business didn't last. It kind of disappeared after a few years, but I mean, some of it depends on your resilience as a person to go into another job search, because that's a little bit more likely with a smaller company. So it's, each case is different. It's exciting, though. It's nice to have options. Congratulations.
Yeah, I was about to say, options are great. The only other thing I would add is there are a lot of really strong, smaller companies in the marketplace, and typically your indoctrination in a smaller company is going to be broader than it is in a larger company. So that's also something to think about. But as Kathleen mentioned, it's good to have the options.
Yeah.
I was recently up at Rag & Bone. You guys know Rag & Bone,
Yeah.
right? Oh my God, if I were any one of you getting out of school, hot company, small company, all young, I'd probably want to work there. So, in a company the chances are is going to do only great, So in that way, it's less of a risk if you check it out with enough people to feel good. That's just my opinion about them, but.
Questions? Alice, how are we on time? What's the time? I don't want to hold, they may have. Oh, this young lady.
Hi, I came in late. My question is, on a go-forward basis, where do you see the niche opportunities? Based on your experience. I mean, you talked about, the Ralph Lauren experience, et cetera, but just looking at this as a consolidated global economy, the difficulties in the retail segment, what do you see as special moving forward for the next couple of years?
I'm going to answer that question, okay? And I'm going to tell you, the way I can answer it is because I see what's underneath, with the financing, whether it's, and I'm not specifically meaning a Rag & Bone or a Zach Boza. Right. The fundamental problem we're dealing with now is we're coming, hopefully we're getting on firmer ground from this this recession that we're currently in, which has probably been the most severe since World War II, right? So what's happened is that it's interesting because it's not only coupled with, we have a banking crisis that's coupled with an economic recession. So there's not a lot of money out there. So unless you have something that has like the best, idea, coupled with a lot of money to get it to the next plateau, okay, it will burn out, it'll vaporize, okay? So for those niche things, you have to be very sure that it has both of those. It has the creative side and it has the money to back it up. Otherwise, it's just not gonna fly. And we see these people, they come in, all day long. I haven't seen Ralph Lifshitz come in lately, but we see these people that segue into our company, and they're looking for us to add, the fuel, the financing, to get them to move along. And unless they have that, the basis, to get them there, they just won't be around. Okay, not in the foreseeable future. You disagree, Mr. Jason?
I agree, and I think that the one thing that's important to remember about the careers I guess you're trying to figure out now is that in fashion, hope springs eternal. Fashion is not like building cars. It's about having a great idea that you can convince someone else to buy into. And whether it be selling small stores in Alphabet City or big stores called Bloomingdale's and Barney's, it's about having a plan of who you want to address. A lot of the companies that you're familiar with, whether it be Rag & Bone or Zac Posen or Calvin Klein or the Marc Jacobs that I turned away, are companies that started with just an idea and a couple of dollars. They borrowed money from their aunts and their uncles and their family and invariably lost that money to restart again with someone stepping in to buy into their idea at a discount. But because fashion is fungible, it changes. What we're wearing up here, other than Kathleen, I guess, is not what you're wearing and probably will not be the trend of next year or the next 10 years. You're at the cusp of developing the fashion industry. And as Michael said, it's tied into the capital side of the business. It will always be. The greatest shame is great ideas that don't get capitalized that go out of business. The greatest opportunity is a great idea with a little bit of capital that can convince people, like a lender like Michael, or another consultant like Kathleen or myself, or with 24/7 at Stewart's company, to spend some time because we believe in how you communicated your idea. That's the opportunity.
You're stimulating my thinking now, and Kathleen said something which I think is key, because I consider myself part of the creative end of fashion, have always been. You said you go in and you don't think of the money, the cost. You try on the dress because it attracts you. That is the key. When you talk about niche, I don't know what the niche is, but we know that the way a woman can be attractive, she doesn't think of the money. She'll steal, she'll put
You'll take it anyhow. Who cares?
That's how we are. Love something. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
Gotta love you.
Absolutely.
I was
But
gonna love
to-
it.
yeah,
Be very visionary, creative.
Right.
Come up with something that's going to make that woman even go to steal.
right, to make it work. It's all about
Wow.
desire,
Just don't get
right?
caught, Alice.
Yes.
And something that I want you to finish too, but I remember David Wolf, who's here every semester, you know, and he expresses it beautifully. He says, wake up in the morning wondering what to wear. You're naked, what to wear. And what to wear is an expression of what's happening in the world, in the times. Fashion is influenced by all the conditions which we're talking about right now. We're in an economic, but we have to rise above it and turn that economic, horrible, depressed feeling into joy. That's creativity, that's visionary. Okay, I said my piece.
Well
I
said.
love that.
Very well done.
I love that.
Because, let me just ask a question, if I could. Because in light of what you and this lovely lady just asked, what do you, I mean, we're going through this upheaval right now, okay? And how would you, let me ask Andy this question. How would you respond to this question for these students? That what is it going to look like? What is their careers going to look like in a year or two? Where there's not, where we're reading, Sachs and Neiman's double-digit declines in volume, and we're seeing bankruptcies and all this negative and bleak news. But yet, Alice, you get up every morning, unless there's going to be global warming, people won't wear clothes, okay? I mean, it's unlikely, What people will wear clothes, but how will they fit in, Andy? That's the long-winded question.
I thought you told me they were easy questions. Not to sound like I'm lecturing, but the economy is not going to get much better in the short term. We're all going to struggle with people looking for the right jobs at the right moment, and with the overall political system being challenged by how much money it gives away, and issues such as paying for education and lodging and health care. We're all going to be faced with that. But as you look at fashion, and again, walking through this city or walking through Boston or Miami and looking at people, hardly see too many naked people in the street. And everyone has a matter of style, whether they buy something online or they buy it in a regular store. It's a matter of understanding who you want to sell or what you want to do and how you want to design. Sort of to take the easy way out of Michael's question is everything that you're going to do in your career in fashion, whether it be apparel or jewelry or architecture, is about product. Product is king and queen in the beginning and the end. Perception. What are people going to think about it? Position. Where does it belong? Price. Who do you want to sell it to? And most importantly, presentation again, because once you figure out how to show it to somebody, you have to hope somebody buys it and puts it in their store. And at the end of the day, you also have to understand the people sitting next to you and behind you, that's your competition. What are they thinking about and how are they going to present it? And as you work on your careers and work on what's going to go on this year and next year, it's to look at the environment you're living in to see where there's an opportunity. Alice said the word niche, which is an interesting word because that's where people live in a tree or birds live in a tree. It's a niche. Well, we all have to fit into that little niche and figure out what we're about in our career, in our product, our design, and even how we communicate our thoughts. So what's the market going to be like? It's going to be about you all convincing somebody that you know something that they don't know, and to be able to think about and present that in some form that they can buy into it. You'll be doing that all your lives. That's what I see.
I have just one quick comment that I think our time is probably limited, so I want to leave you with something. The reality, okay, is that apparel costs less today than it did yesterday, and it will cost less tomorrow than it did today. The industry, since time, has been overproduced, over-retailed, and under-consumed. Other than that, it's a great business. Now, the reality is, okay, that things have just gotten a little bit worse for the apparel industry. It hasn't gotten catastrophic. The apparel industry has been suppressed since the fig leaf. And now you have an opportunity to deal in a marketplace that, at the end of the day, has had some upticks. I think the Nehru, maybe a bell-bottom jean, some of those things that are in the back pages of the fashion's history books were upticks in the fashion market. I think you have to hear all of this and be secure in the knowledge that you have been well prepared, are a special group going into an unusual marketplace in which you can have an impact. And the industry welcomes you coming aboard.
Yes, this young lady.
So you were talking about selling yourself in like 10 seconds in this first match. And I understand that. I understand finding your niche, your passion. But how do you sell yourself in a resume or a cover letter? In just a few sentences. I was just wondering if you have any advice related to that.
Well, one of the difficulties is sending a resume to somebody that doesn't read it. So find out who you want to address it to, number one, and try to make it as close to personal without intruding on somebody's space. The next, again, is that lesson, try to network to somebody within a company to find out what they're looking for. And networking is a lot easier today than ever before, but try to find out what you're sending that letter about, and sort of have a cover letter that addresses the skills that you have that you want to get that job for. Generally, blank cover letters with just a resume or no cover letter winds up on somebody's desk before it gets to the trash heap. So talk about what you think you can do for that company just to get in the door so you can then talk to them one-on-one.
Good. Anything else? Any last question? Yes, this lady, yes. Yeah.
Is that good?
Okay.
I'm 24/7, and I want to know if you offer freelance.
I'm sorry, do we offer freelance?
Place flea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's about 70% of what we do.
Okay, so if I have my resume, I would become a member and I just submit my resume.
Well, you go to 24/7 talent, okay, that's you, and you'll just follow the path. Okay? Yeah.
Great. Terrific. All right, last one.
I was just wondering, with freelance work, do you need experience?
Well, that's a great question. How are you going to get experience if you don't have any? That's what freelance really fundamentally is. What it really is making sure that the skill sets that you have, whether they're computer skills or whatever, Photoshop, Illustrated, whatever skill sets you have are what will dictate where you're sort of going to wind up. But the answer to your question is not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to have experience to freelance. A great many of our freelancers are just like what you are, recent graduates entering the marketplace, and the importance of it to the company, okay, is they have the flexibility and their financial implications that make it desirable to the company, and it's desirable to you because there's some benefits to flex employment, and it also gets onto your resume. Did I answer your question?
I want to thank everybody for coming, even though I'm not sure you really had a big choice in the matter. Thank you. And I want to thank Dean Arbuckle for showing up and helping us with this. She's terrific. Thank you. And Professor Bafasian, thank you so much. And good luck. Yes.
I just wanted to tell you how touched I am with the wonderful, wonderful, I love you all. I'm here because I love these. This class was one of the best I've had in 15 years. I want you to know that, and I'm not exaggerating. All wonderful. Thank you. Whoops.
Thank you.
Yo, you were great. Wonderful, both of you, yeah. Wonderful. You spoke from my heart.
Because your class is great, because you're great. These kids are, now I have to take a picture of you.
Wait, they told me that I never
No,
had
not
to see
here.
it.
Well, have it upstairs.
Put it upstairs? Okay.
Yeah, I never take
No, that's why I wanted to ask you about that. Where is it? What are you looking for?
A639.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mohammed, how are you?
Hi, Professor. I'm going to Paris on Wednesday. Do you want anything back?
I got you.
Bring you anything?
Take this.
Okay.
Put your